Look at the palm of your hand. If you are holding a smartphone, you are holding a piece of African soil. The cobalt in the battery, the tantalum in the circuit board, the gold in the connectors. Almost all of it was extracted from a continent that remains the least industrialized region on Earth. For a century, the global economy has operated on a single, unspoken rule. Africa provides the ingredients. The rest of the world cooks the meal. We have been told for decades that this is a matter of development, that Africa just needs more time, more aid, and more capacity building. But if you look at the architecture of the global trade system, you find a different story. A story of a continent that was never meant to build anything. A region where the roads were built to go out, but never to stay in. Today, we are going to investigate the industrial glass ceiling. We are going to look at the historical blueprints that kept the factories closed, the new global powers that are finally picking the lock, and the specific nations currently in a dead heat to become the continent's first industrial superpower. By the end of this video, you will understand why the question is no longer, can Africa industrialize? It's who will do it first. To understand why Africa isn't the world's workshop, you have to look at the map. Not the one with borders, but the one with rails. When European powers carved up the continent in the late 19th century, they weren't building a society, they were building a conveyor belt. If you look at the colonial railway systems in countries like Nigeria, Ghana, or the DRC, you notice a strange pattern. The lines don't connect cities to each other. They don't facilitate internal trade. They are vertical lines. They start at a mine or a plantation in the interior and end at a port on the coast. They are suction tubes designed to remove value, not to circulate it. When independence arrived in the 1960s, leaders like Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah realized that political freedom was an illusion without industrial independence. They began building factories, dams, and processing plants. For a brief moment, it looked like Africa would follow the path of South Korea or Taiwan. Then came the 1980s. Faced with a global debt crisis, African nations were forced to accept structural adjustment programs from Western lenders. The conditions were simple. Stop subsidizing your industries, stop protecting your factories, and open your markets to the world. The result was a catastrophe that economists call premature deindustrialization. Small, growing African textile mills and steel plants were forced to compete with massive, established corporations from the West and Asia. They were wiped out in a decade. Africa's share of global manufacturing didn't just stall, it shrank. While the rest of the world was moving into the 21st century, Africa was being pushed back into the role of the 19th century resource provider. But that system relied on a monopoly. For 50 years, the West was the only source of capital. If a country wanted a bridge or a power plant, they had to play by the West's rules. That monopoly is dead. Today, the room to maneuver has opened wide. If a government in East Africa wants to build an industrial park, they don't just call Washington or Paris. They call Beijing. They call Ankara. They call New Delhi or Dubai. These new partnerships have fundamentally changed the leverage. China didn't just bring money, they brought the special economic zone model. Entire cities built specifically for manufacturing, with pre-installed power, roads, and tax incentives. Turkey has become a dominant force in textiles and construction, offering technology transfers that weren't part of the old aid packages. The Gulf states are pouring billions into value addition, realizing that the future isn't in buying raw crops, but in owning the factories that process them. But the biggest shift isn't coming from the outside, it's coming from the borders themselves. Historically, a factory in Rwanda was limited by a market of 14 million people. If it tried to sell to its neighbor, it faced insane tariffs and border delays. The African Continental Free Trade Area, or AFCFTA, is the attempt to finally erase the colonial map. It is creating a single market of 1.3 billion people. Suddenly, the math for a factory works. You aren't building for a small country, you are building for a continent.
So, who is winning the race?
If you look at the leaderboard of African industrialization, three distinct models are emerging. First, look at Morocco. Morocco has executed what many thought was impossible. They have become a major node in the global automotive supply chain. They didn't start by trying to build a Moroccan car. They started by building the Tanger Med port, the largest in Africa by container volume, and inviting companies like Renault and Stellantis to build their factories there. Today, Morocco is closing in on Italy in vehicle production, a country whose automotive industry dates back over a century. Experts predict Morocco will surpass Italy's output before the end of this decade. They have already moved from exporting raw phosphate to exporting high-tech machinery and electric vehicles. They are the proof that if you have the infrastructure and the geography, you can compete with the old guard at their own game. Before we get to Ethiopia and the cocoa rebels of West Africa, if you find this kind of analysis useful, hit subscribe. This channel is about understanding the mechanics of the global economy, the parts that don't make the headlines. New video every week. Then, look at Ethiopia. Ethiopia's model is often called the China of Africa. They focused on labor-intensive manufacturing. They built massive industrial parks like Hawassa, the largest specialized garment and textile production facility in Africa, specifically designed to attract manufacturers from around the world. But their true industrial engine is energy. By building the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, they are betting that cheap, abundant electricity will make them the manufacturing hub of the entire region. They are providing power to factories at a fraction of the cost found in Europe or Asia. Finally, look at the value addition rebels, Ghana and Ivory Coast. For a century, these two countries produced the world's cocoa, while Europe produced the world's chocolate. They have decided to stop. They have been building their own processing plants and have implemented a coordinated floor price for their beans, backed by a living income differential that forces buyers to pay a premium on top of market price. It has been a contested fight. The global chocolate industry pushed back hard. But both countries are pressing forward with domestic processing capacity, moving from the farm to the factory. They are proving that you don't need a high-tech car plant to industrialize. You just need to stop letting your resources leave in their rawest form. But if the answer is yes, Africa can industrialize, we have to ask the most important why of all. Why is it still so difficult for the rest of the continent to follow? The first wall is the energy gap. Industrialization is, at its core, the process of turning energy into products. But today, 600 million people on the continent live without electricity. You cannot run a steel mill on a diesel generator. You cannot run a server farm on a flickering grid. The countries that are winning, Morocco, Ethiopia, Egypt, are the ones that solved their power problems first. The second wall is the green trap. Every wealthy nation on Earth built its wealth on cheap, carbon-heavy energy. Coal and oil were the engines of the first industrial revolution. But now, as Africa prepares for its turn, the global rules have changed. Western lenders are increasingly refusing to fund gas or coal projects in Africa, citing climate goals. While the goals are necessary, it creates a massive contradiction. Africa is being asked to run its first industrial revolution on expensive, intermittent renewables before it has the base load power that the West took for granted for 200 years. Is this a genuine concern for the planet, or is it a new way to keep the industrial door locked? The system is still unequal. The constraints are still real. But the era of the suction tube economy is ending. The generation of Africans coming of age today is the most educated, the most connected, and the most defiant in history. They are coding in Nairobi. They are assembling cars in Tangier. They are processing cocoa in Accra. The question is no longer whether Africa industrializes. The question is who moves first and who gets left behind. Here's what I want to know from you. Morocco is betting on geography and foreign investment. Ethiopia is betting on cheap energy and cheap labor. Ghana and Ivory Coast are betting on controlling their own commodities. Which model do you think actually works long-term? And which one breaks the moment global conditions shift? Drop your answer in the comments. The best responses are going to shape the next video. If you want to keep pulling on this thread, the mechanics behind who gets rich and who stays poor in the global economy, subscribe. New video every week.